Healing Hands Health Society presents Dental Webinar Series. We have planned a series dental webinars to keep you abreast of current practice. This series on prosthodontics will be via Zoom, Facebook Live. Presenters are drawn from dental schools in the USA, private practitioners from around the world. To register for future webinars, visit www.hhands.org/dental-training. For future inquiries, contact Facilitator.
So we have Dr. Sree Koka. Dr. Sree Koka is, when I look at him and what he has done, I'm inspired. I tell my children, you guys have to, there's no excuse for not, there's really no excuse for not trying to reach out. I know all the things that, I know where we are coming from and what we have achieved here, and it's really, really commendable. I'm just go and read his bio. Dr. Koka earned his DDS and Master of Science in Prosthodontics degree from the University of Michigan. He has a PhD Cell and Molecular Biology from the University of Nebraska, and also an MBA degree from the MIT Sloan School of Management. He has held numerous academic appointments, including being former professor and chair of the dental specialties at Mayo Clinic. Sree founded a private practice, Koka Dental Corporation, in San Diego in 2014, and currently holds faculty appointments at Loma University and UCLA. He is the president of the International College of Prosthodontists, past president of the Academy of Prosthodontics, and the founder of the Future Leaders Workshop Series that teaches leadership and management skills to early and mid-career professionals. Sree is the current president of the MIT Sloan Club of San Diego and chair-elect of the MIT Sloan School of Management Alumni Board. He is a grateful recipient of 2019 Margaret McVicar Award for MIT Alumni Association. And he's also a TED speaker. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your willingness and your humility, and just your willingness to come here and talk to us today. Take it away, Dr. Koka. Go ahead.
Uvo, thank you very, very, very much for this invitation. You have no idea how much it means to me to the chance to do this. It's not always something that I get to do on a daily basis, is talk to people from around the world. I mean, I do a little bit, but to have the chance to talk to Africa today is a special thing. So thank you. Obviously, we're connected by the Michigan connection, Uvo. So welcome to that club.
Thank you.
And it's great to see Farhat and Sam's name on this call as well. Good morning, good afternoon, gentlemen. So I will tell you that Uvo is making me sound much more distinguished than I really am. Thank you for that. But I was just born to the right people in the right place at the right time. My dad's dentist, my mom's dad's a dentist, my sister's a dentist. There are 16 dentists in my family. And my parents emigrated from India to England. And I was born in the county of Essex, just on the edge of London. And I was raised there. I was raised in a typical middle-class family, and the expectation was you went to university and became a professional, and compared to many, many people in life, I've had it pretty good. Having said that, even for the people that have had it pretty good, this time can be a challenging time. As dentists, whether we like it or not, people look to us for leadership. And there's the day-to-day leadership of making a decision about which patient goes in which room next, or we're going to do an all-ceramic crown here or a PFM. But then there's this kind of stuff that COVID puts in front of us that we're not trained for. We know how to fix teeth, but we do not know really how to handle some of these struggles. And we kind of run by the seat of our pants and just hope that we get it right. But you don't have to do that. I'll tell you, when I did my MBA, probably the best thing I did, because it really broadened my thinking. I'd spent most of my career getting deeper and deeper and deeper in dentistry. First the dental degree, then the specialty degree, then the PhD, then the postdoc, et cetera, which was great. But the MBA really changed my way of thinking and how I look at problems. I'll tell you that you've probably run into this if you do any academics and you're teaching other dental students, But teaching smart people like you lot how to learn is hard. And this is a classic business school paper that says it's really a couple of ways of learning. And one way is what Argyris here would call single loop learning. And that's what we're really good at. We're fantastic when someone sticks in front of us a problem and says, improve this workflow or change something about the process, incrementally modify it. Double loop learning, on the other hand, is where we have to evaluate our own role in a process. And that's a little bit harder for us to do as human beings, and especially sometimes given our personalities as dentists and professionals. I'm going to touch on these things today. And let me give you a little bit of a perspective here. Again, I know you can do dentistry. I know you can do it exceedingly well. Today is about when you're lying in bed at night and all the lights are off and you're not on show anymore with anyone else, and the only person you're on show to is yourself. How do you handle that? How do you handle those conversations with yourself about the struggles that you have during the acute phase of COVID, perhaps, or any crisis, and now going forward with really the long-term implications of a very, very serious change in the way that we live our lives, okay? So we're going to touch on all these things. What I don't want to do is give you a presentation where I just tell you how challenging life could be. I do want to give you some coping strategies. So when you get to the end, I'll go through some things that sort of have helped me, and from my experience with other people have helped other people to just deal with the ups and downs that we go through mentally. So stress. I'm going to use different hierarchies today, or different frameworks that have been used many times in the literature before. Each of these networks has its critics. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they really help me give you a framework on which to hang your thoughts. And this is a classic hierarchy of needs from the psychological research world, from Abraham Maslow. And he has this pyramid. People call it Maslow's pyramid, right? Or hierarchy. And what's interesting here is that COVID is affecting us at the very base level of this pyramid, right? It's not about recognition or things like that. This is about fundamental physiologic needs. In the US, for example, people were getting stressed out about whether they can get the food they need from the supermarket anymore, or the toilet paper, or can we even get drinking water or hand sanitizer. Very basic level of need for us. So when that is threatened, oh my gosh, it's very unsettling. And then there's the safety needs. Sam touched upon us for our work, perhaps. How do we do procuring PPE, for example, and things like that. But this is about our health, right? And getting this disease. I will tell you that my father passed away about 3 months ago, and my wife and I moved in with my mum. Very Asian, Indian thing to do is to move in with parents or have them move in with you, right? And so we moved in with my mother to keep her company. And that's been fantastic. But at the same time, we're living a different life because she's 80 years old and she's got diabetes and she's got heart failure and she's at high risk. So we are living a way, not to protect ourselves, but in a way that we're trying to protect our mum and not bring anything home to her. So all these things sort of impact you and they change your life. And for some people, these changes are easier, and for others, they're just a bit more stressful. So stress is most likely to be harmful if these three things are happening to you. So if it feels against your will, aka COVID, if it's out of your control, aka COVID, and B, if it doesn't actually mean anything to you. And by that, what I mean is that sometimes having stress in your life is a lot easier to accept and maybe even embrace if it's for something that matters to you. But here, it's pretty hard to get excited about COVID, right? Now, this person whose name you see at the bottom, Kelly McGonigal, she's a fantastic researcher in the world of stress. And, I'll show you a couple of resources of hers that I rely on to kind of give me background and give me perspective on how to handle stress. And McGonigal will say, if you can change any of these three things, you can actually reduce the harmful effects of stress. And that's why COVID is so difficult, because you can't reduce these three things with COVID very easily, right? A very classic response to when you think about your stress levels is, okay, how can I reduce my stress levels? How do I do this? Stress is bad for me. Do I do this technique or that technique? And what McGonigal will make a very compelling case for is that this is the wrong strategy. Okay? She will argue, and having read her work and seen her present and read other stuff, I buy this. She says people who try and reduce their stress levels are actually making a significant mistake, and it will not help. And one of the reasons is because when you try and reduce stress, and you go through a series of coping strategies that you think will reduce stress, in the long run, they don't work. And in fact, having the goal to avoid stress has been shown to increase the risk of getting the things you're probably trying to avoid, which are getting depressed, getting divorced, getting fired, things like that. So there is actually a negative correlation between having the goal to avoid stress or reduce stress and bad outcomes. She actually will argue, and I will argue, that embracing stress is more important than reducing stress. This is a book, if you want to buy it. It is a really good book. It's not the easiest to read in the world in this compared to some others, because she is a scientist. She's at Stanford. She runs a stress center and a stress lab. And lots of that work, the real substance behind her theory, she puts them out there for you to read from her work and from the work of others. So this book, The Upside of Stress, is really good. I will tell you that I do courses. I do give courses on how to give great presentations. And a lot of times I will start out with some dental people and show a couple of minutes of their talks from online sources. But what I finish that section of the day workshop with is the TED Talk by Kelly McGonigal. When I was preparing for mine, this is the talk that I used as, okay, if I can get half as good as this, then I'm going to be all right, kind of thing. So this is a great talk. And in this talk, she really synthesizes a lot of, in 18 minutes, what she has in the book. And there is research, you may be surprised by this, that everyone has stress, right? And you can perceive whether you have a lot of stress or a little bit of stress or somewhere in the middle. When researchers have asked people, how much stress do you feel? And then tracked those people forward in life to see how long did they live, the long-term data shows that having little stress or perceiving that you have little stress does not correlate with how long you live. Having a lot of stress does not correlate with how long you live. What matters is what you believe about the stress. So this may sound stunning, but if you have a lot of stress in your life, but you believe that stress is good for you, you will live longer than people who have a little bit of stress, but who think that stress is bad for them. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? So, but try and now put that into your own context. How do you view stress? Have you looked at stress as a good thing or stress as a bad thing? There are different protective beliefs about stress. So one is actually to view your body's stress response as helpful and not debilitating. Some of you may watch videos by Simon Sinek, and he has a section in one of his videos, which is really good, where he says, I used to get unbelievably stressed before I gave presentations, he says. And then this would really impact my looking forward to the presentation and these seconds and minutes beforehand. And then when I was done, it was just like relief. There really wasn't any joy. And, you can probably think about your exams that way, your oral exams. You get all stressed out, right? Because you're on show, you're on display, and you have to kind of prove yourself. And he said, I started to be able to meet lots of famous people in my role, and many of them were athletes. And I would ask them, how do you handle the stress of having to perform at your highest level in your athletic event, like those minutes ahead of time? And he said, they looked at him and they said, well, we don't feel stress. We're excited. And he realized from talking to them that when you're stressed out, what happens to you? Well, your blood pressure goes up, your pulse rate goes up, you start sweating, you start getting agitated, right? Because that's the negative part of stress. When you're excited about something, what happens? Well, your blood pressure goes up, your pulse goes up, your palms start sweating. It's actually a very similar physiological response And whether you look upon it as good or bad, that physiological response, it's all about up here. So if you can think of stress as actually a good thing, and maybe at times even convert it to excitement, and I've been doing this a lot more lately, having read these books, it really is kind of cool. And then you'll find that number 2 comes along, and you'll go, well, I can kind of handle this. This is all right. And you might even develop techniques to help you. So I know it sounds funny, but I've done a lot of teaching. I've given a lot of lectures on a lot of topics, and I've had a lot of students. So even before I gave my TED Talk, right before I went on stage, and my name was being called out, and I had to go out there and give this talk that I'd prepared months for, what I thought about was, okay, this is not a TED Talk. These aren't 1,000 people out there. I'm not being recorded. I am giving my favorite lecture, Centric Relation, to my favorite students, the class of 2001, in my favorite venue, room 15 in the basement of the dental school at the University of Nebraska. And by putting myself there, I actually felt really calm. I was like, okay, I'm giving my favorite topic to my favorite people in my favorite room. Off we go. So that's one of my techniques, right? And then number 3, don't think you're alone. Everyone's got these problems, these challenges. There's something comforting in that, right? There's something comforting in sort of knowing that I'm quite normal here and other people have the same stresses. There's another thing I want you to understand that's pretty important, okay? If you have stress, it means you care. People with very meaningful lives worry more and have more stress than people with less meaningful lives. People with meaningful lives, the data are really clear. If you find meaning in life, you live much longer than people that don't. So that sounds counterintuitive. You're saying, I have more stress in my life, but I still will live longer because I find more meaning in my life? Yes, because you embrace that extra stress you have, because you have that stress about things that you really care about, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Happiness, judgment, and expectations, right? Let's move on to that. Gordon Livingston is a psychiatrist. He passed away a few years ago. He wrote a great book, which is called Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart. And in this book, he has 30 little chapters, right? And they're really easy to read. And I give this book to tons of people. And they really kind of seem to like it. So I keep giving it to other people. And Livingston says, the 3 components of happiness are something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. So again, here we are as dentists. We're always doing stuff. So suddenly COVID comes along and we can't do stuff, and we don't know when we're going to be able to do it again. So there's something to do and there's something to look forward to is sort of abrogated here. It's a bit harder to have clarity about what that looks like anymore. And again, as leaders, we've got our own anxieties, but we're really responsible for our employees, and maybe we're responsible as parents for our children or our spouses or our parents. There's a lot going on there, right? And so it can be daunting because you're not only trying to take care of yourself, you're trying to take care of all these other people as well. And again, that comes with leadership. You can't sort of abdicate your responsibility there. You have to take that responsibility. Leadership's hard. Don't let anyone tell you leadership's easy. It is tough. And there's a science to it and an art to it. And again, if you ever get the chance to go do an MBA or take some courses, I recommend that. Very interesting paper by Naomi Raymond that was sent to me not that long ago, just a few weeks ago. And she asks the question, am I a helper, a fixer, or a servant? And it's a really interesting question, right? She makes the argument that each of these 3 things, helping, fixing, and serving, represent very different ways of seeing life. If you actually are thinking that you're helping someone, you're seeing them as weak, that they need your help. If you're trying to fix somebody else or fix something, you're actually seeing them as broken. And when you do that, you are creating a distance. You are actually making yourself better than them. They need you, and you are somehow extending yourself as an act of helping or fixing. Raymond argues that it's about service. Service is a very different way of thinking. This is when you see them as whole. There is no distance. There is no you're looking down on them or you're thinking of them as needing you. You need each other. So she says, fixing and helping create a distance between people, an experience of difference. You cannot serve at a distance. You can only serve to that which you are profoundly connected. And you think about one of the most amazing people who lived this out in his life was Gandhi, right? And he says, find yourself in the service of others. He doesn't say, find yourself in helping others or in fixing others. No, that's not the game. The game is service. Because fixing and helping are about ego. And you hear this conversation, am I helping somebody else, or am I trying to be a nice person to somebody else because I'm really trying to be good for them? Or is this actually about my own ego, that I feel better about myself because I went ahead and helped somebody else, right? And again, service is about the soul. His Holiness the Dalai Lama comes to Mayo Clinic regularly for checkups, and I've never treated the man, but it's very much in the public domain. And one of my friends at Mayo does spend a lot of time with him. And he says that the Holiness said this to him once. He said, Jim, if you want to be 10% happier, you must reduce your judgment of yourself and others by 10%. But notice how he starts with yourself. As well as reduce by 10% the expectations you set. Again, first on yourself, then on other people. And we do, we set goals for ourselves, and sometimes we feel pressure from other people who have set expectations and goals for us, right? When you're a child, your parents are sort of the arbiter of what's right or wrong, or good or bad. And, they end up being the judges in essence of okay, how are you doing? And at some point, you may find that you start establishing a set of expectations or hopes or aspirations, dreams that are more your own or more influenced by people other than just your parents. But either way, where you set these expectations can be daunting. They can put a lot of pressure on you. So one way you can be happier is to go through this exercise. Not remove expectations, but reduce them. What about a little section on grief? And David Kessler is, again, another researcher in the field of grief. And he makes the argument right now that what we're feeling as we go through COVID and the uncertainty and unpredictability of it, because humans do really poorly when things are uncertain and unpredictable, that really gets to us. He says that discomfort, he argues, is actually grief. All right? And in a way, it's because we're grieving for the loss of the past. We're pretty sure that life is never going to be the same again, right? And for some of us, that loss of normalcy and that loss of, I don't know what the future is going to look like, the fear of the unknown, it's very powerful. I kind of joke that the first marathon you ever run is the fear of the unknown, because you think it's going to be bad. And then you do it. And then every one you run after that is the fear of the known, right? Because you know it's going to be bad. And it's a different kind of fear, but the fear of the unknown is pretty powerful. We might be worrying about the fear of the economic toll. Here I am, I run my practice. We've shut down for a long time. What does this mean for paying off practice loans, paying rent, paying employees, paying yourself? This is tough. And there's certainly a loss of connection here, because the things we're asked to do in terms of be away from people and socially distance, that's where we normally go for help. We normally go get a hug, right, when things are bad. We can't do that. And so the other part about this that's different is, well, if I'm having a bad day or the practice is having a rough period, that's one thing. But when it's everybody, that's actually pretty stressful too. And so, the closest thing in America we probably have had to this has been 9/11. And 9/11, I think, affected a lot of people around the world, but not in the same way, because they weren't actually going through 9/11 the way this country was. But COVID is everywhere. Everyone's actually going through this. So Kubler-Ross has this classic 5 stages of grief model, and she says, here are the 5 stages. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And in denial, it might be, this virus is somewhere else. It's not in my country. It's not going to come here. But it does. And then suddenly you're a bit annoyed. It's like, good grief, now I have to stay home. This is mad. But you may have seen on the news, images of lots of Americans actually protesting about the rules of staying at home. And then you finally say, okay, well, I have to stay at home. You come up with this bargaining concept of, well, I'll stay home for 4 weeks. That's how long they tell me to stay home, and then everything will be okay And they extend it to 6 weeks, and then it becomes 8 weeks. But you're still bargaining, all right? And then maybe there's a point where it really hits home that this is here for the long run. Some of the consequences and how significant they could be can sort of get to you, and you start saying, why bother? I don't know when this is going to end. And then in the Kubler-Ross model, you get to the final stage, which is acceptance. This is real. This dotted line I've put on this sign is to sort of say where if you're above the line, your emotions are probably more positive, and if you're below the line, your emotions are more negative. And if you see most of the words that go along with denial, anger, depression, and bargaining are on the negative side. It's confusion, it's shock, it's fear, it's irritation, it's struggling, it's hostility. And then you finally get to acceptance, and then you're moving on, right? But important to understand that people can go back and forth between these sections. It's not like a continuous path where you clearly move from one to the other. You can go back and forth between bargaining and anger, for example, in any of these steps. There are days when you're more accepting, and there are days when you're more angry. Kessler's interesting because Kessler did a bunch of research and went back to Kubler-Ross and said, I think you've missed a stage. I think there's another stage. And she accepted this. They worked together, and then they published a book together. She passed away not that long ago. And in that book, they extend the 5 stages to a 6th stage, which is of meaning. And this is really Kessler's contribution to the model. And he says, there is no greater gift you can give someone in grief than to ask them about their loved one and then truly listen. When we see sorrow, our sorrow in the eyes of another, we're back to this concept of meaning again. We know our grief has meaning. Pretty hard to grieve on your own, isn't it? But when someone comes to you and says, tell me about this, and you're willing to share, and they really seem to care, that's important. So the reality is that when we heal, and we truly heal, and we get that through other people seeing the meaning of our grief, we're healing as a tribe. And this is that book that they published together, Kubler-Ross and Kessler. Let's talk a little bit about our loved ones and ourselves. This is a scale developed in the late 70s at UCLA to measure loneliness. It's 20 questions, and a person answers each question with never, rarely, sometimes, or often. And for example, one of the questions, I feel left out. Do you feel never left out or often left out? Or I lack companionship. And this study's been, the scale has been validated over a long period of time. And there's 20 questions. If you feel that all these things are happening to you often, you would circle 20 times, and your maximum score could be 80. And this scale has been validated that if your score is greater than 43, you're officially classified, according to this scale, as lonely. What does this mean? Cigna is a healthcare company in the US. And a few years ago, they surveyed 20,000 people because they were worried that the elderly, in America we call them the greatest generation. These were the people that were sort of born in late 20s, early 30s, the last century, that as their friends pass away, that this generation was going to start feeling very lonely. And the spouses pass away, etc. And then but in this 20,000 people population sample, they had people of all ages. And what they found is that actually the greatest generation, the people ages 72 and above, when they surveyed them, had a mean score of 38.6, which was actually lower. The mean was lower than lonely. The baby boomers, and this is a group that's sort of about 60 to 66 now, for example, their loneliness score was actually higher than that of the greatest generation. They were almost as lonely as their mean score. What shocked everybody was that the Millennials, their mean score was lonely. Think about that for a minute. Pretty shocking, right? And even worse, when they looked at Generation Z, their mean loneliness score was even higher than that of the Millennials. So this actually went the other way. They thought the greatest generation would be the loneliest, but that's not the case. So whether you fit into one of these two categories of Millennial or Generation Z, or your friends do, or your employees do, I think this is really important. You have to be aware that these data come from before the crisis. So imagine how people who feel lonely are doing through this crisis. Now, a very logical question that comes up is, well, is this sense of loneliness because of social media? And so Cigna looked at this, and their data are pretty clear that there's actually no correlation found between social media use alone and feelings of loneliness. And there's other data that supports this as well. And there is a sense that perhaps social media use enhances your initial propensity. So if you are someone who's a bit lonely, social media allows you to actually almost be even more lonely. And if you're someone that's gregarious and outgoing, social media allows you to be even more outgoing, right, and more interactive. But it doesn't cause the circumstances. So in times of recession, the number of suicides increases. So the last global recession of 2008 and 10, these data come from North America, Europe, and Japan and Korea. There was an almost 5% increase in the number of suicides, and men are especially vulnerable because, for a couple of reasons. Actually, there's good data that women and men process stress differently, and women do it in a more healthy way. And the other part is men are probably not as good at seeking help when they do feel vulnerable. And so, between you put those two things together, and there's some other things in there as well, we tend to see this. And still in many homes, men feel like they are the main providers. And if they feel like they cannot do that, that's a third stressor that can be overwhelming. This paper came out less than a month ago. It's from Toronto. And in this paper, what they do is they model, based upon past recession models, what will happen to suicide rates based upon unemployment rates, with clear data on this. So they modeled these three different scenarios, one which is no significant change in unemployment rate, one is a moderate increase, and one is an extreme increase. And in the US, we're probably going to crack 20%. So that sort of fits more in the extreme increase in projected unemployment scenario. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to give you the worst one, which says that, and these are data for the US, if there's an extreme increase in unemployment, which has happened, the bottom bullet there, the rise in US suicide rate would result over a 2-year period in 8% more suicides. So, this is serious stuff. And hopefully none of you are going through these kinds of emotions, but if you are, please seek help and understand that it's actually very normal. There's lots of people going through this at the same time. And that your friends, family, employees, colleagues, they could be going through this too. So be on the lookout. This isn't about teeth. This is about something far more than teeth. And that's data just when you have an economic recession. Remember I said earlier, one of the ways we get through hard times is by being with family or being with friends. It's hugging each other. It's all that stuff that you kind of turn to get through. Well, we can't do that. So actually, those data that are just about the economic aspects and influences on us in terms of suicides, we've actually got an extra problem. The social distancing that is supposed to help us prevent the expansion of of infections is actually going to hurt us in this level too. I mean, I understand why we're doing it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing it, but we should be aware that this might be a time again to be on the lookout and think about who we know that might need our help and might need us reaching out to them even more to make sure that they're okay. So, having given you all that bad news, let's talk about some strategies, all right? Now, there are some people who are just really good at this. They just innately happen to be really good at coping. But that's not most of us. And most of us don't have the skills for this kind of crisis that's had a very acute phase, which was quite extended, a couple of months. And now, again, we're hitting this other phase of, crap, this is really here for the long haul. I'm going to have to deal with this. It's not going to go away quickly. So what can we learn then? What strategies can we have in our toolkit to help us through? So one of the strategies that you can use is the strategy of building, specifically the goal of building resilience. But how do we build resilience? Well, this is a strategy or a tactic perhaps, and it's framing. Okay, how do you look at it? So some people will take a tough situation and they will game it. they will turn it into a game, and they'll say, I may lose today, but I may lose this battle today, but I'm going to win the war because I'm going to win the battle tomorrow. And for some people, this is very effective. I will tell you that for many things, this is an okay tactic, but for something like COVID, this isn't going to work. Okay, I don't think you can get through COVID by trying to game it. Learning is another way of reframing. Okay, well, this is going on. What can I learn from this? Think of it as an opportunity almost to learn some new skills. And again, when you can start turning it from a bad thing into a not such a bad thing, or actually even maybe a good thing, because I can learn something from this, then that really can help. So gaming it, I'm not a big fan of here. Learning, I think, has some potential. A couple of other ways of reframing are just to accept that we're not in control, and this is pretty random. And I will tell you that being raised by Hindu parents, even though I grew up in England, I mean, my world outside the house was very Western, but my world inside the house was predominantly Hindu and predominantly Indian. And I learned a lot from my parents, and both my parents, very big believers in destiny, and they raised us that way. You call it karma, call it whatever you want. But the goal of, we're just, we're not in control. I can remember asking my parents, for example, when I was a child, why did so-and-so die? And today, everybody dies of a disease, okay? You don't die of getting old anymore. You die of heart failure or pneumonia or cancer. But sometimes in the old days, we used to say people died of old age. We don't say that much anymore. But my parents used to say all the time, son, they died because it was their time. This is when they were supposed to go. And you grow up with that, and it sort of teaches you, and it puts in you that mindset that my destiny is my destiny. Accept it. Don't fight it. Don't resent it. Because if you resent it, you set up a lot of negative emotions. I will tell you that I don't think you can sort of pretend this bit. You can't pretend that you believe in destiny. You either do or you don't. But if you do, this is a great time to utilize that belief. Gratitude. I said earlier on, I was born to the right people in the right place at the right time. There are so many people struggling right now that, I'm lucky, right? I've still got a roof over my head. I've still got clothes on my body. I've still got food in my tummy. And a lot of people don't. And people who were doing okay before have dropped below the level of doing okay. And so there's much for me to be grateful for. And again, much for me to think about how I can serve others. There is another way to frame, which is to think of yourself as the hero. All right? And this is Ben Gilmore's suggestion, which is every story we love, from Luke Skywalker to Harry Potter, is about the hero who goes through the obstacles. Everyone loves the hero, but the obstacles are what makes the hero. And he goes on to say, the only way to become the hero is to go through the obstacles. And I said I wasn't a big fan of gaming it to get through COVID, and I'm going to tell you that I don't think hero reframing is the way to get through COVID either. I think you're much better off with learning, randomness, destiny, and gratitude. This is not something you can just sort of fight your way through. It's not going to work. Another strategy is to prioritize. Many of you, I imagine, have had time to reflect. I certainly have. I got a bit annoyed because I like to be doing stuff. I like to be serving. I like to feel like my days are mattering. And when I was just sort of stuck at home, I felt annoyed. I felt like, I'm wasting time. And I'd go back and forth through, again, some of these emotions of grief in a way, getting angry. And then I would be very accepting and say, you know what? Maybe this is a time for me to just stop and think about what really, really matters. And I'm going to give you this rule. Farhat's heard this rule from that lecture he's heard me give before, but it's called the Rule of 94. And when I was interviewing to be chair at Mayo, I was getting ready for my interview, preparing and talking to people to get advice. So hopefully I could do all right in an interview. I asked a senior administrator at the clinic, I go, you got any advice for me if I get this job? He said, yeah. He goes, I've got some advice. He says, I don't know exactly what the number is. He goes, but I'm going to pick the number 94. He says for every 100 decisions that you're going to make as chair, if you get the job, 94 of them don't matter. Your job is to figure out what the 6 that matter really are. And if you're lucky, for half of them, it will matter that it's you, Sree, and not Sam or Ugo or Farat making the decision, right? That actually you, Sree, means something that you're making the decision. You got to figure out what the 6 are. And I have to admit, I'm pretty ruthless with this now. I look at a lot of things in life, and my first reaction is this one of the 6 or is this one of the 94? Because if it's one of the 94, I don't want to spend too much time on it. Now, that's sort of a story way of making the point. But this is a more structured framework way of making the same point. President Eisenhower, many years ago said, what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. And Stephen Covey wrote a very famous book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He put this in a little 2x2 diagram. And the pink areas are where you don't want to be in life. So the bottom left-hand corner box is when something is not important, but it's urgent, think of that as something that you need to delegate, okay? You don't want to spend your time doing that, okay? It's actually a distraction. If you're working on something that's not important and it's not urgent, that's also bad, right? Not only do you don't even want to delegate those, you just want to eliminate those. Say no to them. They're clearly in the 94. Now, we go to the top right-hand quadrant. Something's important, but it's not urgent. That means that's probably a long-term goal, right? Something to think about. It doesn't have to be worked on today, but it's part of your long-term strategy for life, your career. Spend a lot of time there. Don't ever get caught up in just the rat race itself of the top left-hand box. Always have time to reflect on where you're going and why you're going there. And then there's the top left-hand box, things that are urgent that you have to do right away, but they are actually important. And these can be crisis-type things or things just below the level of crisis. But you do have to work on this stuff, but you want to make sure that you're not living your life by crisis. Ugo, I don't know if you met Brian Lang in your time at Michigan, Sam and Farad, if you've met Brian. But Brian was my program director when I was there. And he was great. He'd be in his office till 6, 7 at night. And if you stopped in his office, he would say, hey, sit down, let me show you what I'm working on. And I was amazed at how this guy had all these things going on. And I said, how do you do this? And he says, well, he goes, I must admit, sometimes my life feels like I'm just living it by crisis, just going from one crisis to the other. He kind of thrived on it. But for most of us, we don't. And we have to kind of, just bring that level down so that we're more in quadrant 2, or that there's a good balance at least. And that you are working hard to think, is this thing I'm working on or worried about in the pink zone? And if it is, it's one of the 94. How do I get away from it? So what really matters was the previous 2 slides. This is the really important thing. Who really matters, right? I'm going to spend a couple of slides to get you to think outside very traditional, safe ways of thinking about who really matters. I'm going to challenge you here. Jim Hodge is a very good friend of mine, and Jim says, the research is clear that if we go back to our early times of humans when we were hunter-gatherers, as it were, we are hardwired to instantly evaluate whether somebody else can be trusted. Because that ability was the difference between sometimes surviving or dying. Okay, so it's built into us from an evolution point of view that we were really good at figuring out if we could trust somebody else. And then groups that trusted within the group, that cared and shared, had more offspring and lived longer. Okay, whether you were hunting together, whether you were protecting each other from the cold, whatever it was, if you did that as a group that you could trust, you lived longer and your children lived longer. The cardinal sins in these groups were to hoard things or to eat alone, right? And as a joke here in Minnesota, here's a picture of somebody in Minnesota, but this happened all across the US. People started hoarding toilet paper, for example, or paper towels. It was very interesting to see the human response. And, if I saw this person driving down the street, would I think this person's really clever and really smart for for thinking ahead and capturing all this toilet paper? No, I'd get annoyed if I saw this person and think they're a jerk for stopping others from having something that they really need, right? So this is an important quote. I live by this quote a lot. The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's lives. If any of you have siblings, you know that you could be very much like one of your siblings, or you could be incredibly different. What you value and what they value, why you get up in the morning, why they get up in the morning, could be for very different reasons, you know? And you see this. You see this all the time. I mean, you're eating the same food, you're living in the same house, you have the same value system put in by your parents, you might go to the same school, and yet you could be that different. And Richard Bach makes this quote, which I think about a lot. Rarely, actually, do members of one family grow up under the same roof. And, you know, it's pretty clear that humans like to be around other humans who are like themselves. And so in this who really matters thing, I think taking care of your family, not just your blood family, is critical. Now, I'm of Indian origin, and I grew up in London, England. So you would not think that I like American country music, but I do. When I moved to Nebraska, I was there for 12 years. I took on the mantra of when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And I said, I'm going to live my life like a Nebraskan. So as soon as I got there, I turned all the radio stations to country music and just started listening because that's what everybody else listened to. And this song by Sugarland has this line in it. And the premise for the song is that Jennifer Nettles here that you see, she's the lead singer, and she wrote this song. And it's about a young woman who is about to leave home far too early for her parents' wishes and for her mother's wishes. And so as she's leaving home, her mother says to her, the most important decision that you will have to make is which hands you shake and which hands you hold. I think that's very important. As you go through life, who's getting you through these times? It's the people who are willing to reach out and hold your hand. And who are you helping through or serving through? It's pretty important, right? Shaking hands is one thing, but not letting go or reaching out to hold on and stay holding on, that's important. So I'm going to tell you that serving is about the soul, but it's also about happiness. And here is some great data as to why. And the data are built around research that looks at when you spend money, how much happier does it make you? So on the x-axis is money spent, on the y-axis is fulfillment. And this is a fulfillment curve diagram. So when you have no money and you first get money, it in that red zone on this graph here, that's really money that you're spending to survive. It's a tremendous amount of fulfillment, right? Because this is the money that gets you to survive. When you spend a little more money and you go from that red to the next dot, that first blue section, you go from having survival to actually having enough. That's also pretty fulfilling, that money that you spend. Then you spend a bunch of money on the last section here to get to where luxuries are, and you still get extra fulfillment out of that money that you spend. What the research shows is that when you start spending money beyond luxuries to abundance, when it's the third Rolls Royce, you know, or the 15th whatever, you know, China set in the house, it doesn't bring you any more fulfillment. In fact, spending that money brings you less. You are worse off spending that money than you were when you spent money to survive or to get to enough. There's only one way to have the curve go back up. And that's when you take your money and you stop spending it on things that are luxuries and you start spending it on things that have real meaning. When you think of your money as no longer about how you are doing well, but actually how you're doing good for others, how you're serving others. And when you spend money on that vacation or that Rolls Royce or whatever it is, you know, you are really spending money so that you can savor the world, right? So you can experience the world and have all this fun. But the only way you can get that curve to go back up is when you start spending that money, all your resources, your time, your effort, your love, on saving the world. And that's true philanthropy. That is through giving your resources away. So who really matters to you? That's who you have to identify at this time. And you have to go and serve them. And I am sure that as we move from the acute part of COVID, where you thought about this a hell of a lot more than you are now, that there is the risk that you will go back and stop some of those emotions from coming to the fore, where you really were worried about other people. Okay, now you're sort of dropping back into the things are calming down, we're getting a little bit more routine, and you're not worried about other people as much as you were. Okay, please don't lose that sense of worrying about others. So, closing thoughts. This statue was put up on the banks of the Saône River in the city of Lyon in France. And in Lyon, two rivers merge, the Saône and the Rhone keeps going to the Mediterranean and empties into the Mediterranean not far from Marseille. This statue was put up outside the courthouse, and it shows a man carrying the body of another man, and it looks like, this other man is in trouble, this person is being helped to safety, and by the person who's standing. But the real message here is that the body that's being carried is the body of the person doing the carrying. This person is carrying himself, and the name of this statue is actually the weight of oneself. And one of the best ways that you can take care of yourself and lower the burden that you put on yourself is to think about some of the things we've talked about today, which are, how can I be more happy? How do I lower my own expectations of myself and others? How do I think about stress going forward and embracing it rather than worrying about it? And actually thinking of it as a good thing because it means something matters to me. How do I build resilience? How do I reframe in good ways? How do I think about what really matters to me and who really matters to me and who's really in my family? Okay, and who do I stop trying to help and stop trying to fix, and instead, who do I serve? I love this quote. The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and that day when you find out why. And if you haven't had your second day yet, that's okay. I don't think I had it until I was in my 40s, all right? And you might say to me, how will I know when I've had my day? You will know, okay? You will know. You will have that epiphany moment where you will find that the rat race, the chasing of this goal or that goal, although not necessarily bad things, you will suddenly have an epiphany where you'll say, you know what? This is why I'm here. This is what really matters. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope this has been interesting. It hasn't had a single picture of tooth yet. I hope it's all right with you. If you feel this has been helpful and you want friends or family to maybe hear something similar, I'll be giving this again for the ICP in about 10 days' time. And you don't have to be an ICP member. Anyone with the link can go to the website of the ICP and register for this. So it's free. I try and give away most of my stuff, as you can probably imagine. If you want the slides from this presentation, I am happy to email them to Uvo, and he can send them to everybody. Whatever you have, give it away. Doesn't do you any good to hoard it, right? So if you're crazy enough to want these slides, I'm happy to let you have them. And I am president of the ICP, so if the world calms down enough and you want to come to the ICP meeting, it really is the only truly international pros group in the world. And most specialties don't even have a group like this. Come to Shanghai next year. The dates are October 20 to 23rd. And I would love to meet you there in person and get to say hello. So, Uwe, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This has been an amazing time. We're talking about life here. I was talking with Dr. Linda Cooper over the weekend, and he said to me, Uvo, It's not about what you know and all the technology. It's about helping people, and that is what you have put together. That's everything. I know we want to learn this, we want to learn that, we want to learn how to place implants. I want to do good. You want to make more money. You want to buy this. You want to buy that. You want to be alive. You want to be able to handle life. And I think this should be a course in dental school. I think we need to be taught, because you're coming out with dreams. You want to achieve this. You have aspirations. Many years ago, I had to ask myself, why am I here? Where am I going? What do I have? I had to ask myself. This is called Healing Hands Health Society, because for the past 15 to 20 years, I've been traveling. I travel to different countries every year. COVID is making me stay at home, and I had to figure a way out to give something away. And I'm like, I've got to. That's the only way you can be alive. We are feeding people in Nigeria right now. We are building homes for people whose homes were destroyed. I mean, that's what wakes me up every morning. I'm a dentist. I'm being trained. I'm in training. All that is good, but like you said, he's giving it away, and I have the opportunity of giving this away. And we have a great opportunity here to give away. We are trying to build a laboratory in the University of Benin. So if you have any lab tool, used scanner, or anything that will help the implant training in Nigeria, I'm calling on somebody out there. What do you have to give away? Because we want to increase knowledge. And I thought about it. COVID-19 was kept me in this basement where I'm at right now. And I'm thinking, that was 4 weeks ago, what can I do? I have the internet, I have light, what can I do? And I thought of a webinar series to enrich Africa, and you have somebody from Ethiopia. There are so many Ethiopians on the call right now. There's so many people from Nigeria. I'm going to call. Is anybody from? If you are in any country, you are from any country other than Nigeria. Can you type it in the? Chat? Any other country other than Nigeria? I'm going to call on the president of Caleb. Caleb, are you there? Caleb Kairos.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Caleb Kairos is the president of the Ethiopian Dental Students Association. I was looking for, I'm like, there's going to be dental students in Zambia, in Rwanda, in Tanzania, Uganda, Malawi, and these are places I've gone to serve. I've been to Burundi. The president just passed on, and I'm like, how do we get information from the United States? Please tell me, Dr. Caleb, how are you motivating your students, your fellow students, to be here?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ubo. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Koka. It was an amazing presentation, and I hope to learn from you more in the coming years. So far, our association has been very active throughout social media outlets because mostly due to budgets, that is our only method of reaching our members. So on social media, we have daily updates on number of COVID-19 cases in our country. We have been doing posters, and we will now start doing videos. And in order to do so, we have actually called out for volunteers, and we plan on expanding our editorial board into 10 people. It will include a social media officers, video editors, and graphic designers. And we have also been working closely with the dental professional associations of Ethiopia to get an up-to-date information on clinical on how to operate clinically during this era. Other than that, we have started a library, an online library on Telegram, which is social media widely used in Ethiopia. And on that, we post books, handouts from our lecturers, and so on. And pretty soon, we'll start sharing a few scientific papers. And we will also start experience sharing. I'm glad to say that since Dr. Uvov has promoted our library, over 100 people have joined. So we currently have around 440 members from all over the world, which is truly amazing. And I would like to thank Dr. Uvov for this. And we will also soon start experience sharing. When we say experience sharing, we mean to bring about senior students, dentists, and interns from all over our country online, and they'll speak about what to do and what not to do in dental schools, what to expect when they start their clinical years, and so on. So we hope to keep our members interested and up to date on various items. But so far, these are the only things we've been doing. We have been very limited due to budgets.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's Ethiopia. I'm hoping to get folks from Rwanda, so I think we need to have a conference. We need to find Dr. Koka's itinerary, and maybe you can organize a talk to dental students all over Africa. It is just going to be a students' meeting. All the students, so let's work on it. I think, Dr. Koka, what do you think?
Happy to do it. We can redo this. We can do a little bit more on leadership if you would like.
Yes.
Again, these are things you're not taught in school, but I start just like you, Uvo. I started a nonprofit a few years ago, and the goal is to teach you what you don't get taught in dental school. But as someone who's in private practice, we're really good at teaching you how to do the dental stuff. But the really tough stuff is running the business, and there are ways to do that. A lot of times, it's not about making an A+ decision every time. Sometimes it's just about not making an F decision, and how do I make better decisions? How do I make sure that the practice is healthy and viable alone? That's what we try and teach. So happy to do it.
I'll reach out to you, and so all the students, if you are here and you're students from Ethiopia, Rwanda, Nigeria, Ghana, let's come together. Let's reach out to me on email so that we can find a date that will work. It's going to be a student conference where we want to talk about, how to become relevant in our time. Tomorrow, we have two more speakers, Dr. Mendoza and Dr. Raphael Sequela. They're going to be teaching on, speaking on 3D, the use of 3D in restorative dentistry and factors for the successful immediate implant placement in the aesthetic zone. It promises to be a good time. Please reach out to your friends. And Dr. Koka, thank you so very much. This has been an amazing and I have to go back and listen to and I believe I'm going to see you in Shanghai, China, in 2021.
Good, glad to hear it. Uvo, thank you for the opportunity. It means to me to be able to have this chance. So thank you.
Questions? We have some questions here, sir.
Okay, far away.
He says, how do we best deal with the feelings of rejection and personal loss with a view to quickly moving forward with life in a healthy manner?
Yes, it's a really good question. Everyone will grieve in their own way, right? And I think the best way to grieve is to actually share your grief. And that was sort of Kessler's argument. Kessler's argument is that grieving, losing things, loss, if you don't think anybody else cares about those things, it is a very hard road to heal through that. But again, finding just one or two people who will sit down with you, who will listen to you, and you can see in their eyes that they can appreciate your grief, that is a great way of kind of moving beyond some of the other elements of the cycle that are less positive, right? I have a friend, Mijin Choi. Mijin is program director of PROS at New York University. And she said a great line to me a few years ago. She said, "I don't fear failure, I fear regret." It's a great line. So I don't mind trying stuff. I don't care if it doesn't work, if I would regret like not doing it. So I live my life basically trying to take the path of least regret. And there are times when I'm harder on myself than I probably should be by saying, "Why are you worrying about this?" or "Why are you grieving about this a little bit? That's wasting time. You should be moving on and doing more productive things." But I've come to accept that there are times when I do need to focus on myself a little bit every now and then to keep the batteries charged and recharged. So
okay,
it's time for yourself, but I think if it's an acute emotional loss time, then that's a time to actually, you got to go get help. It doesn't have to be professional help. It could be, but it could be just the chance to find meaning in your loss with somebody else.
Okay, One more question here. So how do we define the fine line between trying to fix others and serving them?
So I'll give you an example, okay? And it's my practice. Again, because I believe I was born to the right people in the right place at the right time. My passion is to give back. There are 30 plus prosthodontists in San Diego and the surrounding area. And in America, we have a government healthcare system for those under 65 called Medicaid. And the amount of money you get for doing something for a patient with that insurance is very low. It's so low that of the 30 prosthodontists, 29 don't accept those patients. They will not see them. Okay. And but we see them. We believe that we were born to take care of everybody, no matter what happens. And last Friday was a perfect example. You know, we have some very wealthy areas here in San Diego, and we had a multimillionaire sitting in our waiting room, sitting next to a person who we've known her for a long time. She's this close to homeless, to walking the streets. They would not shop in the same restaurants, their shops. They would not eat in the same restaurants. But here they are sitting in the same room, and they're actually talking to each other. And I love that, Uvo. There's something about bringing all elements of society into this little microcosm that is our practice that matters to me. But I wanted to do this because I wanted to help people. And what got me was a review that one of my patients left for me a few years ago. Another man that had just come out of prison, pretty much penniless, needed all of his teeth taken out and Mac 3 and mandibular immediate complete dentures. And we took care of him. We met him. We learned who he was. We enjoyed meeting him and taking care of him. And when he was done, he happened to go on our website and leave a review. And the words he wrote had nothing to do with his teeth. Okay. He said, "Go see these people. They will not judge you." And that quote, that review means more to me than anything where somebody said, "Oh, they gave me a great smile," or blah, 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 right? I mean, those things were important too, don't get me wrong. But what he was telling me we really needed to do was not perceive ourselves as helping or fixing him. Don't judge as being lower, okay? We were there to serve him. And so that's the example I can give you of how I have sort of had that experience to help me look at life differently.
Okay. One more question here. We have two more questions and we're going to call it. He said, how do you initiate serving loved ones who we clearly see need fixing, such as family, but who we know will be hostile to attempts to intervene in their affairs as a result of misplaced feelings of shame or pride or both?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so you know the rule of 94 that we talked about? You only have so many days left on the planet and only so many hours in the day. And I want to spend those hours doing something that has a chance of making a difference. So if somebody, my wife says to me, she goes, if somebody is very selfish, she says, you don't want to spend any time with them. You don't even want to try. And I go, yeah, that's because I could try, but why wouldn't I spend that time on someone who's already a good person or a better person in terms of wanting to serve rather than wanting to take, right? And so I sound a little callous, I know that. But if that person happens to be a family member, it doesn't change the way I look at it. I kind of have the more broad picture of they're actually not my, that quote about family? They're actually not in my family. They're in my family by blood, but not in terms of values, not in terms of why they get up every day. And so I just keep looking for people who I think I can work with to make a difference, who have a similar value system. So it might sound a bit mean, but I might try a little bit, but then I don't. I mean, they're who they are, and I accept that, but I'm not going to try and change it.
Okay. One last question here. He says, I'm really concerned about how to prepare children for challenges in this world.
Yeah. So I read an interesting article on BBC.com not too long ago, where they have started looking at, in times like this, what kind of people have been better able to handle it based upon parenting style? Okay, interesting question, right? And what they articulated, and I think they put some research out there, is that, in America we have this term helicopter parent, which is the parent that's always hovering over the child, and sort of making sure that everything's just right and they're not put out in any way and life is comfortable and easy, which could be a very natural instinct for a parent, right? Turns out that those children, when they get older, they actually cannot handle when life is not going along smoothly. And most of life doesn't go along smoothly, right? There's some level of compromise. So they said parents who raised children that were better able to deal with these things were people who were encouraging to their children, encouraged them to take on new tasks, new challenges, but didn't do the work for them. And when they weren't 100% successful, were still very supportive and positive with the outcome and the sort of analysis and how could you grow from this. But they didn't protect their children. They didn't keep them away from things just because they were worried that they might fail and not get through. So building resilience, I think, is that's one tool, for example, to help build some resilience.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to have Dr. Mendoza. Dr. Mendoza, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, we're looking forward to having you tomorrow. What's any highlights and what you'll be talking about? Are you going to be giving out three 3D printers?
Unfortunately not, but yeah, I'll talk about them, see how we can use them to make some very nice and very interesting using prostheses and things like that. So it'll be very cool.
All right. It just occurred to me, just because of what Dr. Sree said, I'm going to buy a small 3D printer for University of Benin. I'm going to just because of what you said, we have to give. And if somebody else has, I'm going to buy one small one. Dr. Sede, Professor Sede, I know you're there listening. We are going to send a 3D printer to University of Benin so that at least you have it, see it, try it, buy some resin, and let's see how things will work. Thank you so much. Somebody else is asking. Okay, no problem. Anyway, I will be here back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you so much, Dr. George and Dr. Koka. It's a real privilege to have you on. And take care. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Healing Hands Health Society presents Dental Webinar Series. We have planned a series dental webinars to keep you abreast of current practice. This series on prosthodontics will be via Zoom, Facebook Live. Presenters are drawn from dental schools in the USA, private practitioners from around the world. To register for future webinars, visit www.hhands.org/dental-training. For future inquiries, contact Facilitator